Okay, well, great. Well, thanks, Jennifer. I'll get started then. So, as Jennifer mentioned, I am the sales manager for our electronic security products and services here at FTSI, and I just wanted to spend a few minutes. This certainly won't take up the whole hour, but wanted to spend a few minutes talking about the sunsetting of the 2G cell backup units for your alarm system. So it's an important topic since some of you, although the sunset dates are out in the future, some of our customers are actually getting letters now or have in the past stating that their communication for their cell panels have been or will be discontinued fairly soon. So basically what I wanted to cover today is discuss the timelines of the 2G sunset and why the need for a cell backup unit for your alarm system, what's the need to replace or upgrade your current cell unit, and then just discuss some replacement options. Okay, so here's the sunset timelines. AT&T and Verizon are the two major providers that are going to affect 99.9% of your units. So AT&T is setting a date of December of 2016 for their 2G, and then Verizon is bundling both the 2 and 3G as a sunset of December of 2021. But the key here is that that is when the 2G service will completely be no longer functioning. So as these phone company technicians are going out to do scheduled servicing, they're also in the process of shutting down some of these 2G services. So why are they discontinuing 2G? Why are the phone companies discontinuing the 2G? It's obviously it's an older technology. It was introduced back in 1991, and as most of us have smartphones, the cell service capabilities have changed considerably. So it went from standard voice, voice to text. Now phones have megapixel cameras where we can actually send images over the cell carrier, and now video, as well as access to a lot of data in the cell service network. So the cell companies, however, have a limited spectrum or a limited frequency of which they can support all these services. So what they're doing is they're taking that 2G spectrum and taking that out of the equation so they can support the 3G, 4G, and now even the LTE services. That's much faster and much more efficient. Okay, so basically, how does that cell service fit into your alarm system? This is kind of a basic diagram, but will certainly give you a visual on how it works. So if your cell panel, or if you still have 2G service, you're probably still on a dial-up line. So your primary communication would be dial-up, and then if for any reason, if the line is cut, or if it's unplugged, or it can't communicate to your central station for any reason, then the panel would then convert to the cell communication, and it would hit your obviously the local cell tower, and then that alarm signal then would be received in your central station just like it would with the phone line. And then obviously they would dispatch the appropriate emergency services. So the question is, how do you know if your cell unit is a 2G? So the primary product called TelGuard, they have the majority of the cell units out there. You can tell by looking at the serial number. So if the second digit of the serial number is an 8, then you're pretty much good to go. It's a 3G or a 4G. So if it's anything besides an 8, then it's going to be a 2G, and you need to look at getting that unit replaced or upgraded. And then there's also some uplink units out there, and they base their, you'd have to look at the model number and whether it's GSM. GSM is basically just the AT&T, older AT&T network. So I put a number on there. It's estimated that 15 to 30% of the cell units are 2G. So a large majority of our customer base out there would be affected by this. Okay, so why should you replace or add your cell backup? So as I mentioned, most panels, if you're on 2G, are probably running dial-up as your primary communication. So if the cell panel hasn't been replaced or upgraded, if your line is cut or can't communicate out, then there's basically no means of transmitting to your central station. So no matter how many devices and how well your security plan is laid out at the branch, the key is we need to make sure that those alarm signals get transmitted to the central station so that we could dispatch. Also, the customers bring up the question of, well, my panel goes through a testing process so it can test the communication to the central station, but that is a one-directional communication. So, for example, if your panel is scheduled to do a test at 8 a.m. on Friday morning, it will dial out, it'll hit the central station, that transmission, and it'll confirm that the panel has communicated out. However, if you have an incident that takes place on Friday evening, if the phone line is disconnected or cut, then there's no way for that panel to then confirm that it's lost its communication unless you do have that cell backup. So basically and our work is primarily with financial institutions. It's pretty much best practice to ensure that you have a second means of communication. That's typically a cell backup unit. Also, most financial institutions, if you're not self-insured, it is an insurance requirement. So based on your level of the rating of whatever safe or vault you're using for your cash and negotiables, it's typically required that you have a secondary means of communication for your alarm panel. Okay, so assuming that you're still on dial-up, there's basically two options. The one straightforward is you can go ahead and just take the old cell unit out and replace it with a new 3G, 4G, 3G or 4G or LTE unit. The second option, which I'm having a lot of conversations with customers on, is to now be able to replace that board or that main panel with an IP-capable panel with cell backup. So the newer panels or boards actually have an IP connection directly on the main board that allows us to now communicate over your network and use a cell backup as a secondary. So it's a very good ROI depending on the cost of your current analog phone line. So it varies from $40 to $100 plus. So the ROI is pretty attractive in eliminating the cost. And analog phone lines are kind of similar to the 2G. A lot of the phone companies are trying to get away from the older technology to convert to their voice over IP. The thing that often comes up with IP communications is the IP people are going to ask, well, how does that affect my network? So on the alarm side, the information sent from an alarm signal is very small. It's in bits and bytes versus some of the large data that's flowing through a customer network. So it's really negligible as far as impacting their network. The second bullet point there is that the speed of communication is almost instantaneous. Within a second or two, your alarm signal will communicate out to the central station. In a dial-up mode, it can take up to a minute to actually communicate, dial out, and then connect to the central station. Another nice feature or component of a newer panel is that all the modules now are all the components are modular now, so they all connect to the main motherboard. So in the past, you may have a panel and a battery backup for your cell unit. You may have a separate, for example, wireless receiver that communicates to your wireless hold-up buttons with a separate plug-in transformer. So now we can kind of combine all that to eliminate the need for multiple batteries and power supplies, transformers, enclosures, and things like that. And then the second piece I just want to bring up on the replacing the motherboard is now, especially with our customer base, our security directors that are assigned to manage security for their facilities often wear many hats, so they're always looking for ways in which they can be much more efficient in managing and ensuring that their branches are secured. So these bullet points, I'll go through them. First of all, the web and phone app access. So now the newer panels, you can actually, through a phone app or through Internet Explorer web portal, can actually go in and change the PIN code yourself. In the past, you may have had to go to your central station. A central station may have charged you for that fee. Now you can do that just as part of the panel capability. And then you can also go in and remotely arm and disarm. And if you decide to add access, then you have the functionality of controlling access to certain doors. The user code inactivity, I've brought that up because that's a common issue with customers when they get the results of an audit. Oftentimes you may get an audit back and there's PIN codes in the alarm panel from employees that may have left the financial institution some time ago. So how that works is it's programmed from 1 to 365 days. So it'll monitor if a PIN code hasn't been used over a set period of time, and it will notify you that, hey, this person has not been active in the system, and you have the flexibility to go back to bullet point 1 and go in and remove that PIN code. Another common issue at a financial institution is the testing. So your typical procedure is you want to do a monthly test, but sometimes you may not test all of your devices. So an example is I did a survey for a customer, and they had a roof hatch that went right down into their main server room. But the roof hatch did have a door contact or a contact on it. So I guess I questioned them on how often do they really test that, because that server room is a very critical area that someone could go in and cause a lot of problems with. So what the zone activity will do is it'll, similar to the user code inactivity, we can set a timeline so that if a device has not been tested over a certain period of time, then we can notify you. And the final bullet point on here is bank safe and vault operation. So again, for our customer base and the security directors that have to confirm and make sure everything is armed at night, we can actually set a schedule, and this works similar to a time lock on a vault, so that we can set a schedule so that no matter who enters the PIN number, whether they have access during the day or not, that vault or safe cannot be disarmed. So our security directors have to not only worry about external threats, but also we have to worry about internal threats. So we can now also, the branch environment, as some of you know, is changing quite a bit, where we're looking at branch transformation, where we're bringing devices out into the branch area, such as cash dispensers, interactive teller, cash recyclers that have cash residing in those units throughout the evening. So we want to better make sure we better secure those and confirm that they're armed at a certain time every time. So that's basically it. I mentioned it is a pretty quick summary of the 2G cell service, but it does affect a lot of areas. So in summary, just make sure that you check your notices it may come from the alarm company or from your cell provider, and see if there's any specific disconnect date for that 2G service. Or if you get an equipment listing from your alarm company, you can check those serial numbers that I had mentioned earlier. Or you could go visit the site, physically visit the site, and check the serial numbers on those individual units. And then if you're still on dial-up, so if you still have 2G, chances are you're probably still on dial. There's a solid ROI and some good benefits to get all those components upgraded on your alarm system. So. Jen, that's it. I mentioned it would be short and sweet, but I want to thank everyone for joining the seminar today, and please let us know if I can ask any questions, or feel free to, there's my contact information, feel free to contact me directly. I'd be glad to help you out.